Lovely. So, hello everyone, and welcome back to iSpy 360's webinar series. Today is Future Fridays, and I am lucky enough to be joined by Grant Bigler, who is the Vice President of Customer Success at OBEO. And in today's session, we're going to be talking through the 2D floor plan and 3D model, and looking at the differences between the two. Now, to start off today's session, I'm going to be hosting a short interview with Grant, asking him a few questions about the platform, about OBEO, and about 3D models versus the 2D floor plan. Following that, Grant's going to be giving us a presentation that he's put together about floor plans and models to have a look at the differences between them. And then at the end of today's session, we're going to have a question and answer session. So if you have any questions at all throughout the session, do please feel free to ask them either in the chat box below or through the question and answer function inside Zoom. So let's get started. Hello, Grant. Thank you so much for coming along today. Just to start things off, would you be able to tell us just a little bit more about yourself and OBEO?
Yeah, Frederick, thanks for having me. It's always good to speak to people who have the Queen's English perfected. I'm a West Coast man. Our headquarters, OBEO, is in Utah. I joined OBEO about 6 years ago now. I had a technology company that I had built for real estate that I sold to OBEO, and then part of that acquisition, I just joined OBEO's team, and then we have since had way too much fun rebuilding. We took a 20-year-old company and a company that was really known in the space for photography, virtual tours, things like that. And we completely revamped everything, literally from the ground up. All new technology for logistics and routing, all new technology for all of our virtual tours and marketing automation, all new technology on the photography side and the post-production, artificial intelligence side, massive amounts of investment there, just to help first, I guess, address the needs of an individual agent and for large enterprises at scale, while keeping that quality and consistency that we wanted in this next iteration of OBEO. So yeah, we're having fun. We're having too much fun.
Excellent. Well, good. You want to have fun in the workplace. But then sort of leading on, so you said you've had sort of this whole sort of rebuilding of the company. How's that sort of been affected over the last few months with COVID, and sort of what's the impact of that been?
Yeah, COVID, isn't that the conversation of the day? It's been interesting. COVID, we're a nationwide company and we serve a lot of different verticals in real estate. So we service a lot of agents and brokers. That's a core part of our business. We also do hotels. We do a lot of vacation rentals. Really, any kind of real estate we do. What we found with COVID is it really depends on which governor in which state had what policy at what moment in time, right? So we had brokers that had a pretty big impact in California when they initially did a lockdown in May, early May and through June. And we had other brokers in Georgia had a similar thing, right? But what we've had is maybe the advantage of being in so many markets that where we have seen some markets dip a bit, we've also seen a counteractive growth in other markets. So the net result for us, if you measure it by overall orders being placed for professional services that OBEO delivers, photography, 3D tours, aerial, twilight, a lot of the content production, we've actually seen a decent growth this year, which, look, we'll say thank you, right, to the industry for trusting us during a hard time. But it also, I think, has become a pretty interesting defining point for the industry as a whole, addressing COVID and not just COVID as the actual infection, but COVID's impact on how people are searching for homes, how they're viewing homes online, what content is needing to be produced, et cetera. So we've actually had a good lift as a result of COVID.
Definitely. Wow. And that's it. As you mentioned earlier, that's sort of OBO specializing in photography, but also virtual tours, artificial intelligence. Have you been seeing floor plans as well becoming a sort of standard request across your sort of customer base?
That's actually pretty interesting. Floor plans have been, well, let's just say for 20 years, right? Floor plans have always been around, just like regular photography has been around. Um, but what we have tried to do when, 5 years ago, when we really did our revamping and re-engineering of OBEO, what we didn't know is why were floor plans and why were any other bundled service ordered? Because a lot of providers like OBEO will bundle services, and in addition to photography, if you pay a little bit more, then we'll throw in this product or this product, right? Well, what's interesting is that question you just asked, how often has floor plans been the frequency of floor plans being ordered? It's really hard to tell if it's bundled, because you don't really know if they're actually ordering floor plans because it was part of the bundle and a good deal, or if it was just because they actually wanted it. So we've unbundled them. We have a lot more analytics now as a result of that, to show that actually floor plans, while bundled in really popular packages, you would have thought they were a really big item of want and need, when in actuality, not as much when you unbundle them. And this is price agnostic, right? So it's not like unbundling made the prices for photography and floor plans higher. There was a lateral move
Hmm.
on pricing structure. And even still, there was a lot less interest, which for us was just good data to show. And we have some competing customers that will just bundle it together, and they'll tout the floor plan. But I think the actual data shows that floor plan, when it's really a product of media to showcase a property, um, it's still there. People still order them, right? But we're seeing a pretty big shift, especially since 3D has made a pretty big jump over the last couple of years.
Definitely. Well, that's what I was going to ask you next then. If there's this sort of odd change in attitudes towards floor plans, how are you finding the 3D model comes up against that?
Well, you can't like give away my presentation, Frederick. We're going to go into there's some really interesting stuff with 3D, really interesting stuff in 3D over the past 5 years, and really will be more interesting stuff in the next five. So how about I cover that in a couple of really easy slides?
Perfect. Yes. How about we jump straight in then to your presentation? Um, and you can tell us more about the 3D model and where that's going.
Awesome. Let me figure out how to share my screen. I guess before I do that, one thing to keep in mind: how we gather data and how we look at decisions at OBO. Um, we have uh, we have several customers, large brokers, large enterprises who order, thousands of photography packages, 3D models, aerial drone photography, etc., from us on a monthly basis. And these enterprises have given us access to not just their agents and brokers, but the homeowners who actually receive the content, or it's content from my house, right? And so we've been able to get surveys pretty easily done because we have that unique access point. And these are really bland surveys. They're not, to anybody else, it'd probably not be very interesting, but the data that you get actually from the homeowner and then subsequently from the agent, and reconciling that data, that's how we compile decision making at OBO. That's the lens we look at, right? So with that, I do that because I give that disclaimer. And while I'm giving that disclaimer, by the way, the share screen functionality, it looks like, is not enabled. So while you figure that out, Frederick,
Yes.
I'll at least give a preview. Let me know when to click the button again. So here's really the funny thing to us when it comes to understanding where 3D models and floor plans fit in the current world, and likely where they will fit in the next chapter of real estate media and content production.
Fantastic. So if you give me one moment, I'm just going to quickly, lovely. I'm just going to, one moment, I'm just going to quickly drop out and see if I can resolve this with the sharing screen.
It looks like it's still disabled. Well, while you figure that out, these screens aren't like, image, nothing really to look at. It's really more for engagement. So why don't I proceed? And then just hop in when you think I can, okay? Is that fair? Ah, here we go. Look at this. You figured it out.
Lovely. Sorry about that. I think we've got it all figured. There we go. Perfect. Thank you everyone for your patience. Just when I work out how technology works.
Okay, Frederick, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, this was really kind of a funny way to maybe to begin this conversation on 3D versus floor plans. But think about this for a second. If it only really takes, and this is validated by several studies that have been done on Tinder, like hundreds of thousands of users, it only takes 3.19 seconds average to swipe right. Only 3.19 seconds. So the real question is, how long do you think it takes to swipe right on a property photo that's online? The question's interesting to us because as media content creators, when we actually are looking at photos online and consumer behavior online and how they interact with it, first of all, you've just got to have great photography. You've got to have great photography. And B, secondly, understanding the psychology behind this, and there's plenty of studies on this that are intriguing. Like, why is it swipe left to right? Why not right to left, for example? Well, interestingly enough, English, and these are behaviorists that actually give this kind of data. Behaviorists say English writing is left to right. So it's a natural progression to go left to right when something is good. Also, interestingly, if you look at movie production, actors, when they go left to right in motion when good things happen. Even action sequences do the same thing. They did a study with Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, and they looked at his motions when things that were actually good, like positive things were happening, he was moving left to right. Action figures are moving left to right. So it's leaning into this kind of data, right? How do you, whether it's photography, 3D models, or floor plan, they're online. That's the ecosystem that the consumers are taking it in on. And so when you put something like that online, you have to start leaning into this kind of data. What causes them to swipe? How fast are they swiping, etc. So with that in mind, when it comes to 3D and floor plans, we ask the question, what is the real problem that we're trying to solve? And that's, it doesn't matter what product you have in your universe, it was solving a problem. That's why the product exists or the service exists. So what is the real problem we're trying to solve? At OBEO, when it comes to this particular topic, this is how we define what the problem is. It's how to give buyers the opportunity to tour your home from the comfort of theirs. That's the actual problem I think we're trying to solve. And so if you look at that problem, you really have to start asking you this question: what do customers prefer then, and why? Are they preferring to just swipe and look at a 2D floor plan that they can pinch and zoom, or are they preferring to swipe over and click and get an immersive experience where they can now drag and drop, click and move through a property, right? Yeah. If we were agnostic on this and say we don't have a preference, truly what do customers prefer and why? I think what will be interesting. So I'm going to answer this question by leaning in a little bit more into augmented reality, which is where 3D plays a bit, right? Whether you agree with this or not, right? Let me show you some data as to whether the world is no longer what you see, it's what you'll augment. Okay, let's just play this out for a second, because the answer to this question, I think, will help give the right context into whether 3D versus 2D floor plans, which one, if you were on the fence, or even if you weren't on the fence, it helps give you some context as to where 3D operates in the world. So that being said, 3D, the world of 3D, when I first, uh, well, not, I've been in the real estate business for a while. I mean, it's been 20 years in various forms, right? Investor, technology creator, business owner, consultant, now in the services industry. When I first leaned into 3D, of how 3D was actually being used to into the real estate space, it was about 2011. And and I remember exactly where I was in San Francisco when I first heard about it. There were a lot of different beta testing companies going on at the time. And they projected that in the next 5 years that the 3D industry would exceed about $1 billion, which at the time in 2011, that was a lot, like that was a sizable company, right? Or sizable market opportunity. Here's the actual data from 2017 and 2018. It was 3.5 billion in 2017, almost 6 billion in 2018. And now you wonder, where's the big jump and what's justifying that next big jump? Here's what's really intriguing about this. And this is, I mean, you can validate this. There's an IDC report on this. Goldman Sachs has done several studies specifically on 3D augmented reality and where it fits in our space, in our world, in the years ahead. It all validates this way, that in this direction in 2025, you are going to have a massive, massive evolution and revolution in how consumers use and operate with 3D. It's going to be massive. So as a use case, just to give you a little teaser about why I think actually, I mean, okay, now we're in the $200 billion mark, right? So if you're going to be off by 20 billion, is that like a big thing or not? I don't know. I'll leave that to like the analysts, but I do think that it is more of a hockey stick that's going to come into play in how people digest it. And as one use case behind that, and I promise this is all tying back into 3D. Okay, like I don't want to lose. This guy's only talking about augmented reality, etc. But augmented reality and 3D are sisters and brothers. Like it is a very similar experience from an end user, how they actually consume data. If it's 2D, that's great, right? But if 3D actually is a thing, that changes how people consume information. So let's look at Apple as a use case. And I'll bring up Apple because their ecosystem is extremely strong. And I'm not, okay, so I have Apple devices, right? Like we probably all have had an Apple device or have them, but I'm not an Apple fanboy. I think Microsoft, Google, there's plenty of other players that have gone into the market and have really leveled the playing field in a lot of way. But the ecosystem that Apple has is actually really, really strong, right? So let's lean into a couple of things that Apple is doing in the 3D space right now. So three main things: Apple glasses. You've probably heard about it, or maybe have, I mean, there's been conjecture about this for a few years, but it's not really conjecture. It's not a matter of if now, it's a matter of when. When you actually have glasses that support a 3D augmented reality. Now, Google tried with glasses, right? But it was slightly different. Plus, they don't have like a similar ecosystem. And I'm not trying to justify success or failure on Google's part, right? But when you look at how Apple can pretty easily start integrating little devices like AirPods into their ecosystem, it's an interesting example about how consumers can adopt easier the technology, which was the biggest problem with 3D in 2011. The adoption wasn't ubiquitous because you had to actually invest in a device, right? In order to consume 3D, you had to invest in a phone, you had to invest like VR, you had to invest in goggles. So it was, the traction, the adoption may not have happened as quickly, but that investment into the equipment by the consumer has actually been very robust over the last 10 years. Very, very robust, which I would say Apple Glass is a great indicator as to how potentially the adoption of 3D in a new product will just carry forward, right? Second example, their AR kit with the LiDAR. I mean, their new cameras on their phones is supporting LiDAR, which is really a modeling aspect, right? And so the modeling of Apple when it comes to using the like scene geometry is something that is improved. The object removal and object blocking, etc. Like that's a game changer in the 3D space, augmented reality space, game changing, and that just happened this last year, right? There's been a lot of movement now in how people are using that in 3D space when they look at products that fit in homes. Same thing with this last one, Quick Look. This is really an e-commerce play on their part where they can take, I mean, their lead into this is getting e-commerce furniture and other ancillary sellers to sell their merchandise for like an instant augmented reality experience. Now, it's not really about the furniture or LiDAR glass or any of that stuff to me. None of this is, the only reason why I bring this up is because if the billions of dollars that are now invested into 3D augmented reality are actually shaping how consumers interact with it, then we should be taking notice. All of us should be taking notice. Okay. So that's where we lean into, you've got to know the customer. You just have to know the customer, know how they're consuming information online, what their preferences are, right? And so when you look at knowing the consumer, there's some really interesting things that come to our perspective. You have technical and device advancement. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, where now you have 5G networks that, before 5G, 4G, 3G, there's just some technology that just wouldn't work. But the more advanced the infrastructure gets, and the more advanced your devices get that can play with that infrastructure, the easier it is for the consumer to start to expect that that's what they will be getting when they start looking at things online. Hence why if we do like a T chart and does 3D floor plans get a vote here, or 2D floor plans versus 3D models, obvious check mark in favor of 3D, right? In all these directions, right? And the more consumers are going to experience this in other places, the more they're wanting to experience it here. That's to the point of commonplace 3D. I I sometimes think back when I had a flip phone and then smartphones came out. You just didn't want to be the guy that was bragging that you still had a flip phone.
Yeah.
You just didn't, right? You didn't want to be, "Oh, yeah, I still got the flip phone. Oh yeah, I got it." You just don't play that card, right? So the more commonplace 3D gets, the more social pressure maybe, right? Or just, the experience of it all will be that you're not going to be bragging that you've got a floor plan, because the floor plans actually come with a 3D model, right? Like they just kind of blended those nicely together. Generational communication preferences. This is interesting. And I say generate, that's a lot. Man, who wrote this? I don't know who wrote this. That's awful. Somebody could have simplified that a lot. I'll talk to my alter ego after. Look, we've just had generations of, the smartphones just changed everything, right? How we communicate, but it's also changed when we communicate. And that, I think, is a huge part into how we interface with our buyers and sellers right now in this space. How they communicate, okay, so they're going to be texting probably preferred more than a phone call. But if they get to a phone call, there's been a lot of due diligence prior to, so that when that phone call actually happens, they're ready to go, right? It's not just, hey, I'm interested now. They've done a lot of legwork before that phone call. And so you've got to be ready to go too, right? That's kind of the thing that we see in the marketplace. And then scheduling nuances. Man, there's dual income homes like great, like more and more, years we go, there's more and more dual incomes, trio incomes, quadruple incomes, right? People are getting second jobs, etc. Plus now you have remote versus in office, which has also adjusted the times that people are actually working. It's not just an 8 to 5 anymore. You got people that are working beyond that and before that, which just means that it's harder to actually schedule a showing, for example. You've got a lot of different variables that you've got to coordinate with now, and that impacts how people are actually going to show properties, I think, in the future. And then the buying cycle is actually pretty interesting. This, I alluded to it earlier. This is like the swipe buys, right? A lot of people are just swiping, but they're also doing a lot of research. And so, you have your impulse buys, which we would consider more of like your swipe tactics, right? That's an impulse buy. A house is still their largest investment they're ever going to make. But because it is, and because they have so much access and easy access to information, a lot of that research is happening now. It might not be good research, but it's in their minds, it's research. They've already been doing a lot of homework on properties that they liked, and so they're not really shoppers anymore like they used to be. I don't think they're actually shoppers. They're going to want an experience that when when they've done the research and they find a property that they are interested in, and we've heard this a ton from customers, the more 3D tours that they've put onto listings, they've seen the number of calls that come in, if they could measure this, the number of calls that have come in from interested buyers that aren't just kicking the tires, but actually, no, this is the property I want. That has gone through the roof for them, through the roof. And so, and I guess the third, or that last bullet point there, the interactive ROI, the return on investment, right? We know that the average person in today's world has so many social connections, so many they can't control, right? None of us can control the hundreds of social connections. You can add friends on any platform, but you can't really engage with all of them very effectively. And so um, that ROI, when you actually have a conversation with somebody, is a huge deal. So all that being said, so let me wrap up the why behind this now, okay? Your question, Frederick, and the question on the table is 3D versus floor plans. Our customers, we've seen when we released 3D nationally in May. We actually weren't a provider that released it nationally. Prior to, we've done a lot of different beta testing, trying to understand the different pros and cons to the different platforms that are out there offering 3D. When we released the 3D service nationally, that was by far our biggest interest in from our customers. Now, that's great for us, right? People are ordering, we're able to fulfill. But as great as that was, we leaned in further and talked to our customers and wanted to understand, okay, so that's great, you're ordering 3D, but is it working? Is 3D actually working as a tool to actually engage more qualified buyers, make it easier on the transaction, make it easier to gain transactions, right? Close more listings, etc. And the answer by far is yes. By far is yes. Now, they also, it's this combo, right? Like there's going to be more and more data and analytics that jive how much more, right? But they have seen, the ones that have actually implemented 3D as part of their listing package have seen tremendous growth, even in a COVID market. So that's a long answer to your question, but I hope it gives some perspective on where we see 3D fitting in the overall world, where it is going, the investment from major companies, which that's only a side product that really tells us that it could actually change the consumer behavior, how they actually interface, which is why when we look at the market, OBEO, photography, high content provider, premium content, etc., we are involving more and more 3D into this, and 2D isn't even there. It's not even an evolution because 3D is part of it. 3D is part, I mean, it's just been swallowed up in 3D.
Yeah.
So there's my 2 cents. Get the cane, yank me off the stage. I'll talk forever. I think
Brilliant. Really informative, really exciting stuff. Um, and it's interesting to see just how huge that growth has been over the last few years, and where it's going to go. It's really exciting.
well, and you guys have done, in our opinion, like there's different pros and cons, right, to all the different softwares, and we've tested all of them. We have tested all of them. We really, really like what you guys are doing, by the way. Like there's some nuances there that, and I'm not expecting payment for this. I just, you guys are actually doing a good job. And the reason why I think is because you're leaning more into the same things that we lean into, which is how are consumers actually digesting content that's online. The more we can understand that, the more successful everybody's going to be.
Definitely. And that's it. I think just being able to move with the times and with this sort of, I mean, it's not even a replacement, it's like the step up for a floor plan. It's a more sophisticated way to actually represent space than sort of that traditional just flat plan. Um, it's definitely really exciting. Now, we have had a few questions in from our audience. Would it be all right for me to ask some to you, Grant?
Sure. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hey, I can't promise. Well, no, I'll always have an answer. I'll always have an answer.
Well, if not, don't worry at all. But our first question is, are 3D models more expensive than a traditional floor plan?
That's a good question. I would say yes, but slightly.
Okay.
Slightly. It's not like, I mean, I think the national average for floor plans that we've seen just, by ourselves and, in the industry, you're about $100 for a floor plan in the 3,000 to 5,000 square foot home range. And to give you an idea, for a complete 3D model, you're like 135 to 150 in the same range. So yeah, I mean, I would look at that. I know that wasn't the question. Well, that was the answer to the question. I'm going to take that one step deeper, because the way that I look at it, and I think the way a lot of really successful agents and brokerages look at it, is a 2D floor plan. It's all about calculating your ROI. And so if you're going to invest $100 to get a 2D, is it worth spending even $50 more for an immersive 3D? Absolutely. You're going to get far more ROI going down that route than you ever would getting a 2D floor plan. So it's going to help both on the seller side, on the buyer side, and on your brand and what your brand actually means.
Definitely. No, I think that's exactly it. That's really, yeah. I've had another question in, which would be, what would be the process of hiring one of your photographers?
Oh, we've made that way too easy. Way too easy.
Better easy than impossible.
Yeah. Look, honestly, let's just say the photography world, that provider world was fairly broken, and we were even like an industry leader. You just had a lot of people, like little gerbils in the back end running around trying to make things happen for people. We've automated the entire process. So all people really need to do, you can go to OBEO.com, click sign up. It's an account's free, and then you just put in the property address and select what you want. When you click order, that order is routed to the closest photographer. We're on demand. The logistics is all automated. So the closest photographer, you get an automated text that joins you to the photographer. You figure out the right schedule that works for you and your schedule, which on average is like within 12 hours, we could be out actually shooting. And then all the content's done within 12 hours after that, right? Like we're really fast at this. So yeah, hey, I appreciate the plug. Actually, whoever did that question, thank you. It allowed me to actually give a little plug for OBEO. We've just made it easy. Just go in and put in the address, click order, and everything else will be super fast and premium quality. We've done, okay, to finish the plug, because I know it wasn't there. 3D models, actually we use iSpy as our 3D model. And on the photography side, we've taken what an industry, like a high premium HDR photo would be about $600 for 25 photos. We've automated everything so that it's actually on average about 150. You're
Wow.
getting the same quality as a $600 high-end HDR for 150 with
That's
a fantastic experience. So if you haven't ordered, you got to go to OBEO and experience it. And if you have a hiccup, let me know. But man, that's like less than 0.05%, not even 1% of hiccup. So
I'm going to head to OBEO. I don't need any photos taken, but I'm not. I need to be there.
yes, you want to order photo. Good. Go order photos. We want to fulfill.
Fantastic. So I think you've spoken a little bit about this, but someone has just asked in, what are your customers saying about the 3D models?
Oh, that's interesting. So, for a time we were actually, like I said, we were testing various 3D models, right? And because there's differences. There just are differences. And depending on how you capture them and everything else. So the 3D models I'll do a blanket statement and then maybe a specific one. Blanket statement is the 3D models, best way to say this, one of our local customers, I ran into one of their listings that was an active listing. It was by a friend's house that I was visiting. They were out in the front yard, and I saw this customer sign. So I walked over and I said, "Hey, you're with this brokerage. How? What do you think? What do you think?" And they said, and this is the homeowner. The homeowner said, "Oh, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. The experience, whatever, was great." And I said, "Oh, that's cool. What do you like most about it?" And now we pride ourselves on amazing photography, right? And I wasn't like leading them into, photography or whatever at all. It was really, I just wanted to understand without leading questions what was their best. They said, "Dude, this 3D model was like, it is so cool. We've shared that with so many of our friends and family because it's just a really cool technology. We've never had that before." And I'm like, "Oh, that's actually pretty cool." Dang it, they didn't say anything about the photos, right? That was my initial. They didn't say anything about the photos, but the 3D was way cool. So now they did say after, and they said, and the photos were awesome. The house looked better than I didn't know it could look this good. But that's from a homeowner perspective, directly from their mouth. They think it's really cool technology. A lot of homeowners, it's not like this ubiquitous technology that exists everywhere right now. And so when you give it to them, it's like a pretty cool wow factor. And on the broker and agent side, I mean, every broker and agent that we talk to is always asking about it. They're always asking about it. So now, from the different providers' perspective, that the second part of that question, man, we find that iSpy is a lot easier to capture a 3D model. There's differences, there's nuances, but the edges are a lot cleaner with an iSpy 3D model than they are with other 3D providers. Like sometimes if the camera didn't quite reach something on another 3D model, you can get a little bit of pixelation in the 3D model where it just kind of goes black. Everybody that has had another 3D tour has experienced it. I don't think I need to say it. And if you haven't, you should go through the headache that we've done so you can see the difference. But if you don't capture it in its total entirety, you can get some blank spaces. But I think iSpy has actually done a really crisp 3D model. For that reason, we really like you guys.
Fantastic. And we have one final question before I let you go, which is, again, you've sort of answered this, but there's a little bit extra to the question. It's, how does OBEO compare price-wise, and what areas do you cover inside the industry?
Yeah, I guess part of that we alluded to it. I mean, one thing we didn't want, the game we didn't want to play, and we know it's played often in this space, is you'll put a retail price on your website that's jacked up for the individual agent that's going to, you're going to pay $600, but if you're a broker, we'll give you a deal. And instead of this, outrageous price, we'll give you a discount from that, which from our perspective is still outrageous. Because you shouldn't be paying more than $150 for photography, for high-end premium photography. And then your 3D models should be a little bit less complex in this massive drop down that you got to scroll and say, oh, this is my square footage of the property, and then see the price. We've simplified all that. So our main thrust as a company is to provide premium products at non-premium pricing. So if you compare us, apples to apples, orange to orange with any other provider, you're going to see a really high quality product, and you're going to feel great without having to pay for it that you otherwise would have. So without dollars, I mean, we're in every major market in the U.S. We're beyond every major market, even in non-major areas. Our commitment is anywhere you order a photo, we have the right resources to get it fulfilled. And 3D, we're actually 3D we're releasing in major markets right now, right? So 3D is not, we don't have the same coverage as 3D, but in your major market areas, we do. We'll do everything possible to make it happen. So if you got customers with demand, or if you are a customer that has a demand for this, reach out to us, and we'll figure out how to. If we don't have it, we'll figure out how to make it for you in your market. Chances are we've got it, though. Chances are we've got it.
Fantastic. Absolutely incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming along to today's presentation, Grant. It's been absolutely wonderful having you. And as I'm sure all of our attendees have seen, it's been really informative. It's been a great discussion. So again, thank you so much for coming along and joining us.
Thanks, Frederick. Good to be here.
My pleasure. So for everyone else watching, that concludes our Future Friday session this week. We'll be back again for Tips Tuesday next week. So do make sure to tune in. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming along. Stay safe and stay healthy out there, and have an absolutely wonderful weekend. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.